Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our event celebrating The Bloom Girls by Amy Pine. I am Estelle. I am helping out Barbara's Bookstores tonight and helping to host this event a little bit. We are so excited to have you here, and I'll be chatting around in the chat once I disappear from the screen. But I did want to go over a few housekeeping things just in case anything happens, because we are virtual and anything can happen. Just in case you're having trouble with the picture, feel free to refresh. You won't leave the event, you'll still be here. If you have any questions for our authors, for Amy or for Alyssa Friedland, feel free to add them to the Ask a Question. They'll both be taking questions toward the end of the event. And I think we're ready to get started. So I just want to introduce Amy and Alyssa really quickly. I'm going to start with Alyssa. Alyssa Friedland is the author of 4 novels and a forthcoming picture book. Alyssa currently teaches creative writing at Yale and resides in New York City with her husband and 3 young children. She loves wine, ice cream, forensic files, and texting her friends obsessively. Her recent book, Last Summer at Golden Hotel, was a Good Morning America buzz pick. Hello, Alyssa. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
And now we have Amy Pine. A librarian for teens by day and a writer by night, Amy Pine hails from the far-off galaxy of the Chicago suburbs. The Bloom Girls is her first women's fiction novel and was recently called a tender and fun story by Shelf Awareness. She writes funny and sexy cowboy romances under the name AJ Pine, and she also co-hosts a podcast about Korean drama called Afternoona Delight. Yay!
I'm so excited that you mentioned the K-drama stuff.
Yes, I have to.
The most important part of my bio. No, I'm kidding.
I love that you have a podcast, so I think it's very important to bring up.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to disappear. Oh, one last thing. I just want to say, if anyone is ordering from Barbara's Bookstore today, we have signed book plates for Alyssa's book, and we have signed copies of Amy's. And if you use the word event as a promo code, you get 10% off tonight. So we'll share that a little bit later, but don't forget. And now I'm going to disappear like magic.
Thanks, Estelle.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Meredith in the chat that she has to find the podcast Addicted to K-Dramas. I'm too Meredith, which is why we started the podcast. And it's called Afternoona Delight. And it's anywhere you listen to your podcasts. So there's my little spiel for that. But wow. Yeah.
I know we're supposed to talk about the Bloom Girls, but what is K-drama?
Korean dramas.
Like TV shows from Korea?
Yes. Like if you get me started on this, it may take the whole hour. So
no, I'll make it
snappy.
The conversation. I figured it's like the version, like the screen version of K-pop, right?
So. Yes. So, so this happened. So during the pandemic, right? Especially when we were really on lockdown, I binged everything I could find that I knew that I wanted to watch. And it was a couple other of my writer friends, Leah Riley and Chanel Clayton. I'll give a shout out to them because they are the reason why I watch the K-dramas now. They're like, you have to watch this Korean drama on Netflix. It's called Crash Landing on You. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, why? They're like, because it's romance done right. And we've all written romance, all 3 of us. It's romance done right. You have to watch this show. And I've watched stuff with subtitles before, and I don't mind it, but I didn't want to hunker down for 16 episodes that are all an hour and a half long. Long story short is I got sucked in big time and haven't looked back. So there's a lot of K-dramas on Netflix, but there's also a subscription streaming service called Viki, which is only Asian television. And I subscribe to Viki too.
Okay.
So yeah. So there you go. But yeah, the
podcast. No.
Yeah, the podcast is basically looking at Korean dramas through a writer's lens. Since all 3 of us who do the podcast, it's my friend Leah Riley and Megan Erickson. So we do the podcast and we talk about it from the writer's point of view, and it's a lot of fun.
I love any job where you just have to watch TV and you've done your job.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, if somebody could pay us for it and actually make it a paying job, I would be totally down for that. So just putting it out into the universe,
It might blow up. You'll be getting advertisements soon.
Exactly.
That's cool. I guess that's what I'll do after this is over. I'll try one of those shows. Anyway, so thank you everyone who's here tonight. I have to say, like, I know we're going to talk about Jewish themes in books, and I love that your mom was like, I'm proud to call Amy my daughter. If there's like anything more Jewish than that. Like,
I know. Thanks, Mom. She's
so
compelling.
She definitely knows my mom for sure. The Bloom Girls, I was a little nervous when I first received, I was on vacation. And so I couldn't get the book until like 3 days before. And I was like, how am I going to have time to read it? I'm busy. Well, it turns out if the book's really good and you sit down and start reading it, you could read the entire thing in a day, which is exactly what happened for me reading The Bloom Girls. I mean, the first like little bit, I had to get over the fact that I know someone named Matthew Bloom, who's one of the major characters in the book.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, just get over it. It's not the same Matthew Bloom. And once I sort of got over that hurdle and like got deeper into the story, I tore through it. It's so much fun. It's like, I hate when people say like it's an easy read because that makes it seem like it's simple and it's like written for like a young audience. It's not. It's like the prose is beautiful and you're a very gifted writer, but it's easy in the sense that like you can get lost in the story and you turn the pages without having to think too hard, which I love. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. So I guess as a first question to kick off things, this gets a lot of comparisons to the Gilmore Girls for, to me, very obvious reasons. I mean, there's so much amazing mother-daughter banter in the book, and the mother character had, her daughter when she was a teenager, just like Lorelai had Rory. So do you love Gilmore Girls?
Oh gosh, yes.
You read a million times. Did you write this book and then think like, wow, this has a lot of parallels to Gilmore Girls? Or were you like, I really want to write a fictional version of Gilmore Girls? Like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
First of all, thank you so much for like the lovely response to the book. That makes me so happy. I'm so thrilled. I just read your book last summer at the Golden Hotel and I loved it so much. So just makes me so happy. On release day to hear such wonderful words about the book.
It's amazing. You did an amazing job.
As far as my intent, 100% intent to write a Jewish Gilmore Girls. Like that was, I was like, but my thought was, and I was always team Lorelai and Luke. Like I was always team Luke, but I always in the back of my head was like, what if Lorelai and Christopher is Rory's dad, for those of you who don't know the Gilmore Girls, what if, 20 years after the fact, that after they became teen parents and couldn't make it work out, if the timing was right again. But then what if I threw like another little wrench into the plan and also, made the mom get pregnant again at 40 when she thinks she's going to be an empty nester. So yeah, so the catalyst for the book was 100% the Gilmore Girls. And then I just made it Jewish and changed the course of how the Gilmore Girls went. And that's
the grandma from Gilmore Girls was in Dirty Dancing. She's Stevie's mother. So
yes, so that's an awesome connection.
There's a Jewish connection there.
Yeah.
So I hadn't written this question out, but because you just said it, since you write about having a baby at 40 and having a baby as a teenager, but not having a baby in the more traditional time, what interests you about that?
First of all, I'd like to say none of that is autobiographical. I had my kids at 31 and 34. So there was nothing autobiographical about that, but I'm done. Like, let's put that out there. This is not me like announcing something exciting. No, but I did think about that, with my kids now being older. I mean, they're not super old. They're 12 and 15, but I'm one of those people who I enjoy the baby stage with my kids, but I never got baby fever, like holding somebody else's child. And I've never, since my kids have grown out of the baby stage, never ever wanted to go back there and do that again. And so it kind of got me thinking, what if I had to? What if I had a little oops? And when I thought I was going to be an empty nester and thought I was, maybe premenopausal, all of a sudden I'm pregnant again. Like, how do you rearrange your life when you thought that whole part of your life was over? So the teen pregnancy thing was, that was inspired by the Gilmore Girls. And I just wanted that closeness between Gabby and Alyssa, where, they were close in age as far as, how that also kind of made them closer emotionally. But yeah, the pregnancy at 40 was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do if that happened, kind of thing. And so that was a really good conflict to throw into the book.
it's a really good complex because I turned 40 2 weeks ago and I couldn't stop thinking like, what if that happened to me? Like, well, it would not be, that's not what I want. So
Right.
it would throw like a huge wrench into my life plans, but that is real life. That's what
Right.
happened. So I thought that was really amazing. I loved it. I guess I'm going to dive into another question. So the book, obviously, it's very Jewish. How do you? I thought it was just the right amount of Jewish, I should say, which is like so terrible because like
No, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Jewish, like that could probably be like a controversial statement, but it does relate to my question for you, which is like, how do you know what's the right amount? Like, you don't want the Bloom Girls to only be read by Jewish readers, of course. You want to reach a wide audience, which it will. So how do you know? Like, how do you know how many times to talk about like Shabbat or the holiday, the bar mitzvah? Like, as a writer, like, how do you choose like where the line is?
I was going to say, for me, and I don't know. So I'm more culturally Jewish. I would say that I am religiously Jewish, if that's a way to describe it. Like, I observe the high holidays, and observe the ones that like everybody knows about and stuff. But my mom's like probably cringing at me talking about this, but I don't belong to a temple right now. I've gone to services at her temple. I don't belong to a temple. I know. Not cringing. I don't belong to a temple right now.
Is not upset. Okay.
Yes, that's my mom. But I still think acknowledging Judaism in my life is important, and acknowledging it in my children's lives. And my children, their dad is not Jewish. So that's a whole other component too, is they're exposed to both Judaism and Christianity. But for me, and this was like when I was kind of brainstorming this idea with my agent, this is already like a few years ago, I wanted a book for Jewish people like me, for Jewish people who, who aren't, like I'm Reformed, Judaism, which is, is I guess relaxed, as you could say, in practice, right? Like,
I'm also Reform.
Yeah.
Reform.
So I wanted a book that was for people like me who were still, like, I feel like I'm still learning about my life as a Jew, like even in my 40s, and still kind of growing into that. So I wanted a book for people like me, but I also wanted a book that wasn't going to alienate readers who weren't Jewish, who didn't know anything about Judaism. And so I think finding that balance was kind of easy for me because I wrote it from my perspective, I guess, as far as how much Judaism plays a part in my life right now. And I want it, like, I don't want to say it's incidental because that's not, it's the wrong word, but it's the kind of thing where it's there, it's always there, but it's not the only thing that defines me. And so I was hoping that any readers who weren't Jewish, that when they read this, they would be able to relate to it from whatever religion that they are coming from, kind of thing, especially like there's a funny scene later in the novel where 3 rabbis converge at Thanksgiving dinner. And, I'm hoping that anybody who is reading that, maybe from a Christian perspective or, any perspective where you have these officiants who are going to preside over a wedding and everybody in your family wants their person to, officiate the wedding, that you could kind of get it, that even though you don't know anything about rabbis, you're like, I could totally see like 3 pastors or 3 priests, or something like that. So yeah, I kind of chose the things that I thought were universal to everybody.
You did a great job. I would say universal is like the word I was going to use, because feel like if you're Catholic, you're like, oh yeah, I could see 3 priests, like super easy to imagine that. And family issues and this kind of story can happen in any culture. So it was really great. I felt like the reaction to my book was similar, and I'm sure you're going to hear the same. Like, it's nice when there's a book with so much Jewish culture that's like not about the Holocaust, which is, that's very traumatic. And like, it should hopefully not be the only story of the
exactly. Like, it's important. It's definitely important that we always remember the Holocaust. But that's one of the things that I've talked about, when talking about the book, is I want a book just about Jewish people just being people and, a slice of life kind of thing, and dealing with, sort of wacky stuff like getting pregnant when you think you're done with that part of your life, and getting engaged when you're barely out of college, and, and they happen to be Jewish too.
I think like, J. Courtney Sullivan writes about being Catholic, and it's not like we Jewish people aren't interested in reading her books, and the issues are really, really relatable. So I think you did you struck just the right balance, and I really enjoyed it. And it was so much fun to read. If you haven't read it yet, you will definitely not be sorry when you pick up a copy. It's such a fun book, and it's like, of course, the perfect summer book, but such a pretty cover. Can you tell us like a little bit about the cover and go through many iterations?
No, actually my editor sent me a picture of it, and I was like, I love it. The only thing, and this is really funny, and to tell you, I still have my ARC. I don't have my author copies yet.
Wow.
I'm excited though. I've seen it. I went and saw it at Barnes & Noble today. I saw it at Barbara's yesterday.
It makes me smile. It's like a happy cover. So tell us.
It was one of those. Yeah. So my editor sent it to me, and she's like, what do you think of this? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. But the only thing that I noticed is, both women have long hair. And in my first iteration of the book, Gabby had short hair. So I was like, all right, she's got long hair now because I want it to match the cover. So I went back and changed her hair throughout. And that was pretty much it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times where they'll be back and forth, between author and publisher about a cover. And this was not one of those times. I was like, it's beautiful. Thank you.
What happens the first time like that? It's really magical. Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Okay, let me look at my next. Oh, this is quite true, this question. And I'm just curious, like with Alyssa, who has the same name as me, being a pastry chef and the way you describe the food, like, do you have a sweet tooth? Like,
what made
you give her that profession? Were you just like eating an eclair and like decided, okay, you know what, I'll have her have a bakery?
Yeah.
Or do you have experience with baking?
Not baking like
that.
Tell
us about like why you gave her that job.
I'm much better at baking than I am at cooking. My mom is the cook. And she's a great baker too, but like I can bake really easily. I don't very often, because if I have baked goods in the house all the time, then I will eat the baked goods in the house all the time. Because I do.
Welcome to like
the
story of my COVID.
We did a lot of baking early in COVID. Yeah, I mean, that was
sourdough starter.
Yeah, but yeah, I and it's gonna be interesting because in book 2, in the second book, I'm bringing some more food into it, but I'm not like a whiz in the kitchen. So it'll be interesting to see how I do with that. But yeah, the bakery stuff, like, yeah, I have a sweet tooth, and I don't know, because it's been so long since I actually, drafted it, but I don't know what made me go that route, but I just love the idea of food. I love food in books. Like, I think food is such a fun thing to connect people in books. And I think food is definitely a big part of Judaism. Like, even though Alyssa's bakery is, she has everything there, like there's definitely, there's mandel bread and there's, babka and stuff like that. So I do think food is a great connection too.
Can you get a good babka in Chicago?
I have not had a babka in a while. Trader Joe's has babka, but I've never tried Trader Joe's. Yeah, I've never tried Trader Joe's babka.
I'll try that because, like, I live in New York City. Like,
yes,
we own Jewish
bakery. You do. You absolutely do. You own babka.
Lauren is saying Shalom Bakery. Okay, Lauren.
Lauren's writing Shalom. Yes, we do have some good. Yeah, because Lauren. What's funny? I talked to Lauren yesterday. Lauren and I met like a year or two ago. I can't get it straight with COVID. She's in the States too. Doing an event for American Jewish Libraries, and it turns out we live like 15 minutes apart. So I know the bakery she's talking about is basically where we're at.
Right. Well, when I visit Chicago sometime, I will go. So I know as a writer, I get asked this question a lot, which I'm always surprised that people are interested in. But since I get asked so much, I'm certain people are interested. Your writing process. Did you know how the story would end? Did you outline it? Did you write every single day? You have a day job as well, obviously, as a librarian. So what's your day like? What's your writing process like? Are you someone that needs to like shut yourself in a quiet room? Are you okay to work with distraction? Can you get little pockets of work done while you're at your other work?
Yeah, no, I wish. Yeah, no, cannot write while I'm at the other job. But yeah, at home, I choose little pockets when I can, because I try not to write when I'm supposed to be hanging with my kids. but I need quiet when I'm writing. Like I can write at like a coffee shop, like I can have ambient noise, but I can't have like the TV on or anything like that. I don't listen to music when I write, which I know a lot of people think is really weird. I don't listen to music. If music's like, if I'm at a Starbucks, music's on, fine, but like I'm not paying attention to it. So yeah, I do need to be focused. I do outline. Sometimes that's because I have to, because in order to sell my publisher on a book, I have to show that I have a beginning, middle, and end, but it's usually just like a 1 to 2 page outline.
Sure.
And I like doing that because then I know that I have a complete story. But then once that outline is done and, you know, approved by my editor or whatever, I don't look at it again unless I write myself into a corner. And then I'm like, is there something I could do here that I like thought about before that I don't know what I'm doing now? And so a lot of things do change. Like I knew how I was ending the book for Gabby and Ethan and Alyssa and Matthew. I did not know that last line that I wrote until I was getting closer to the end. And I was like, oh, I know what the next book's going to be. So yeah. And I was very, very nervous. So thank you to Madeline Colavita for letting me keep that last line, my editor, because I was very nervous that she was going to be like, you can't end a women's fiction book on a cliffhanger, but I did. And she let me, so. So yeah, I knew the bulk of it. Like I knew the main characters, but I didn't know, like I had signed a 2-book contract. I didn't know what book 2 was going to be until I was getting closer to wrapping up this one. And it just, you know,
you get to see with these characters, which is amazing.
And that happens a lot, that like side characters kind of take a life of their own, you know, like as I'm writing, like I've had that happen in my romance books too. And that's always super exciting for me, where I don't know what's coming next. And then I have this great character that I'm like, oh, you need a story.
Yeah. So, like it's the spinoff. It's you know, Frasier after Cheers, you know, I love that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
So where are you in the second book now? Like,
I'm drafting it. It's due September 1st. And I'm on target. I will say that.
Good.
But yeah, so I'm writing it right now. It's a lot of fun. It's very different. For anybody who's wondering, because I know that there was a question like, is there going to be a book 2? There is a book 2. The book 2 focuses on Becca and Sadie, so the 2 sisters. So it's going to be a story with both of them, and that's all that I will say about it.
Right. So I know that Barbara's Bookstore put it in the chat, but in case people didn't see, there's the button at the bottom, ask a question. We already have 4 questions, but I'll wait. But you can, you know, you can drop them there and I will be sure to get to them. Okay. I know you were supposed to ask me questions. And
I got some. I know I've got some.
I talked at you for 20 minutes because I wanted to ask you a lot of questions. So I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll be quiet and I'll listen to your questions.
I'm excited now. I get to be the interviewer. Okay. So your most recent release is The Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. And like, you know, you're talking about mine being described like Gilmore Girls. I've seen yours described as Dirty Dancing meets like The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, both of which I love. But the book takes place in present day, where those two don't. And I totally got those vibes from this book. So being a New Yorker yourself, like I've never been to the Catskills. Did you frequent the Catskills growing up? Is it because you were a Dirty Dancing fan? Like why the Catskills? Why a failing resort in the Catskills?
Well, I did want to write another. My third book, The Floating Feldmans, was a Jewish family story, and I really enjoyed it and wanted to stick in that lane. And so the Catskills was more of like just a very natural choice because I love writing a vacation story, and the Catskills, so Jewish. There's like an amazingly rich history there. And because my books tend to focus a lot on intergenerational issues, the Catskills is such a natural choice because it was like so unbelievable in its heyday and then it really declined. But the generation that has the fondest, most unbelievable memories of the Catskills, they're still alive. And they're looking at like what kids are doing today and their grandkids. They're just like going off to do like, you know, ridiculous trips. They'll drive 7 hours to get like an Instagram picture. And they're like, what are you doing? Like you could go and like, you could have 10 times the fun and just not get on an airplane to get a single picture. You could just drive up Route 17 and be in the Catskills for the summer. And they really believed that that was like the better way of life. And in some ways they're right, but in some ways the younger generation is right. And that there's more to the world than the Catskills. And there's nothing wrong with getting on a plane to go to Iceland, to go like hiking in the glaciers, you know? So there's a tension between the old and the new. And so the Catskills is such a perfect choice for that, I thought. And also the Catskills is having a revitalization now. So there's like a Catskills 2.0 happening. It's totally different than like the Dirty Dancing era. It's, first of all, it's not Jewish. I mean, there's some Jewish people there, but it's not like predominantly Jewish. And it's like all health conscious, sunrise yoga, farm to table, artisanal beer, like all that kind of stuff. But as far as my personal connection to the Catskills, I went to the resorts on vacation with my family in the 90s. So they were already on the decline. Like, I'm not saying that I noticed it was on the, first of all, I had no comparison. But besides that, I was a teenager. So like, what teenager was like, wow, this carpet needs a refresher? You know, like I wasn't paying attention to that. I was like chasing boys around the hotel the whole time. But my parents certainly noticed that it was not the Catskills of their youth. And my family history in the Catskills, like my mom spent every summer of her childhood, like one after the other for 20 years. She went to a bungalow.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah.
That's awesome. And I loved the juxtaposition of the youngest generation, like Phoebe and her Instagram, and then the older generations and the goat yoga. Like it was so funny. I loved it. Yeah. I've not done goat yoga yet. I've done just hanging out with goats, but I want to do goat yoga.
No, you don't. It's terrible.
It's gross. Like basically,
I mean, I thought it was disgusting. So like, I feel really bad saying that.
That's too funny.
I did it only once. Maybe I need to try a second time, but I don't really know.
Okay, so your bio, like, so Estelle mentioned some great stuff in your bio, but another thing that I caught is that you graduated from Columbia Law School and you did practice law for a little while. How did you transition from being a lawyer to being a writer?
So funny you're asking me that, because last night my best friend sent me a New Yorker cartoon. I think it might be in this month's and this week's issue. It's like a child is sitting down his parents to tell his life plans, and he's like, Mom, Dad, I want to go to law school to eventually decide I don't want to be a lawyer. Oh my God, my journey in a cartoon. At least I'm not alone. You know, I wanted to be a writer, but I really didn't know how to make it happen. And I wanted to make money. Like, I hope there's no shame in admitting that out loud, you know?
No.
But I did. Like, I worked really hard in college. I worked really hard in high school. And I was like, now I want to make some money. And so I was like, I know I can make a lot of money as a lawyer. And certainly in New York, like the firms pay very well. And I went to Columbia, which was so lovely because I got to live in New York, which was my dream. And then I worked at a firm for 3 years, and I did make like a ton of money, and it was really awesome to like have this huge paycheck. The problem was that like I had no interest in the work. I was like a terrible lawyer. I just did not care. Like I never cared about what I was doing. I was like really kind of doing the bare minimum, which is so terrible. And I was like, it didn't feel good even to like collect the paycheck after a while, like when I felt like I wasn't giving it my all. I was like, I'm not happy. I know this is not what I'm meant to do. And like, there are people who actually like their jobs. I want to be one of them. And I quit, and I just wrote my first novel, like Leap of Faith, sat with no contract, no agent, editor. I had nothing, just me, and I had a laptop. And I went to, like you said, like I went to Starbucks. I worked in different places around my apartment, and I just got it done. And it was like terrifying, and it was really bad, and like I had to rewrite it 1 million times, and it took a long time to land an editor, but then it did, and then from there it's been great. So that was my path.
That's awesome. That's, you know, one of the things that I try to hope my kids see, like about me, is that you can figure out what you want to do with your life at any time in your life. Yeah. You know, like I didn't start writing with intent to get published until my 30s. And I'm so happy that I did, because now I get to do it. Yeah.
I really like that you said that, because sometimes I do feel like, well, law school is very expensive. The law firm experience wasn't great for me. I'm like, oh, like I wish I'd just maybe taken the leap of faith sooner. But I love the lesson. Like you say, I have 3 kids, and I'm like, I love the lesson of like, to show them, look, like mommy went to law school and didn't like being a lawyer. Like that's between like the 3 years at the law firm, the 3 years of law school. It was like a 6-year detour, you know? And I worked a year before law school, like just deferring going. And it was 7 years. It was like 7 years, not remotely like advancing me towards my writing career. Like if people are like, oh, well, law school will make you a better writer, but like that's actually like so not true. So I'm like, if you want to write like really dry legal briefs, sure.
Right, like technical writing, sure.
Yeah, but like it's got nothing to do with being a novelist. So that's all like hogwash. But I do like it. Like if nothing else, if I give my kids the lesson, they're like, yeah, it's fine. Like your mom, who you think of as really successful, because like they go to a bookstore and see my books and they think I'm like, you know, a celebrity, which I'm not, but like they think so. But like she had no idea what she was doing when she was in her 20s, and that's okay if you don't.
It's okay.
So I like love that you said that, because now I feel good about my 7-year detour.
Good. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You had to take that detour because that got you where you are now.
I love that.
So, all right, a little bit of a switch. So one of the things that I saw on your website is that you love Broadway show tunes, as do I. I love musical theater.
Wow.
My last trip before COVID was to New York City with my kids to take them to their first Broadway show, and we saw Be More Chill. My daughter's like a total theater nerd, so I'm now living vicariously through her, because in another life, I'd have pursued musical theater if I had her talent, which I don't. So this is all just to say, do you have a favorite musical? Like one where you could say, this is tops for me.
You know, I'm going to say an answer, but it's really my second, but I just don't want to give the answer that's everyone else's answer. So like my real favorite is Hamilton, but that's everyone's favorite. So I'm like, I don't want to say that, because Hadestown is unbelievable. I don't know.
I'm dying to see that. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Like
it's
totally
like
dying.
Mind blowing. And I listen to the music all the time and just getting more familiar with the lyrics, like, and the deeper meaning. Like I'm so like, it's just like Greek myth, but there's it like blends two different Greek myths, but so Lauren Margolin loved Hadestown. But when you listen to the message, like you realize that there are all these applications to our current situation. Like there's like a song like, Why Do We Build the Wall? Like,
oh gosh.
Wow. Like that's crazy, you know, and there's stuff about the environment and the climate change, but it's told through like Eurydice, you know, like it's so wildly, or Persephone or whatever. I don't know. They all sound the same, but like, anyway, it's a brilliant show.
My daughter has listened to every score from like every musical, whether she's seen it or not. And she loves Hadestown. We were actually supposed to, in July 9th of 2020, we had tickets for Dear Evan Hansen in Chicago, but of course that didn't happen. So we are looking so forward to hopefully like live theater coming back.
Total crazy aside, I just have to say that I also teach writing, and one of my students is going to be in Dear Evan Hansen in Chicago. Oh
my gosh, seriously? So it is coming back. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, her tour is like, I forget when she's joining the tour, but yeah, it's starting.
Oh my gosh, that's so super exciting. I can't wait to tell my daughter that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I had a theory that I wanted to test, because I wanted to see what your favorite musical was first. So I love a lot of and I think like I had different favorites up until Hamilton came, right? And then like Hamilton blows everything out of the water. But my favorite up until then, and I probably have seen less than you because you live a little bit closer to to the source. But one of my favorites that I've seen multiple times in different fashions is Les Mis. Oh, I love Les Mis. So my question is, because I find this a lot when I talk to people, like there are people, like I have friends who their favorite is Phantom of the Opera, and they don't like Les Mis. And I love Les Mis, and I'm not a huge Phantom fan. So I've always wondered, like, why are they, like, they're sort of like juxtaposing a little bit. Like some people, like, do you like both of those? I don't love Phantom. I'm going to say it. I don't love Phantom. I don't hate it, but like, I would not pay to see it again.
I enjoy the music of Phantom, but I was really disappointed when I finally saw the show. And I was like, that's it. Les Mis blew my mind.
Okay. There we go.
Times 1,000. So I would say I don't like Phantom, but I wouldn't go see it again.
Okay. So we're in the same camp. All right. And I don't know if I'm just making this up, but to me, I feel like you don't love both. I don't know anybody who loves both of them at this point in my life, but maybe somebody in the comments.
People that's such a cool, interesting experiment. Let me think about that.
Yeah. Right. Social experiment. Can you love?
I have some new friends that are into theater. So like, that's a fun question to ask. Okay. I like that.
Okay. Somebody asked me this last week, so I'm going to throw it at you. Is there like a weirdest or funniest thing that you've come across in researching something for your book? Like that you didn't know that you were looking for, and then you found it and you were like,
this makes me laugh, but I don't, it's not like a specific incident, but I always give my drafts to my mom to read. mostly so that when she finds problems later, she doesn't say to me, like, if only you had shown it to me, like in this, literally, that is why I show it to her, because like, I know otherwise she'll be like, I told you, you should have cut that character, you know?
You are giving my mom ideas right now.
Yeah, it's pretty
not
hard.
going to happen, Mom.
Oh, the trauma. Anyway, but for this book, I gave it to her for that reason, but also because she had spent every summer of her childhood for 20 years in the Catskills. So like, it was of course, I wanted more than her editing. I wanted her, critique of like, right. Did I get the area right? And so I gave it to her, and the story was like exactly pretty much as it is when I gave it to her. And she called me and she's like, I really like it. And I do think that like your descriptions are good. And I really like the plot. She's like, but I was like, yes. Like, it was not nearly as PG as you've described. Everyone was shipping everyone.
I love that.
Like, you need to just make this a whole lot more realistic, because she's like, put it to you this way. The wives were there for Monday through Friday without the husbands. The husbands were in the city. The wives were there. There were a ton of good-looking staff. Like, just, you're a writer. Take all those facts and do something with it. She's like,
and you did something with it.
Yes. So anyway, it's funny that
I love that. That was super. That was super
funny. Makes me laugh, because like, it's my mom telling me to like make it raunchier.
Go, Mom. I approve. I loved it. All right. So my last one, Estelle mentioned this. So you have a picture book coming out. Like, tell us about that, because that's a big switch, right?
Yeah. And it's not, it is a big switch, and it is not a career change. We anticipate this being a one-off experiment. It's called The Museum of Lost Teeth, and it tells the story of a first tooth to fall out of someone's mouth, and he makes his way to a museum where all the teeth that fall out are kept. And it came out of like, when my kids, I guess because I'm a writer and I'm creative, like when my kids started losing their teeth, of course I left them money. But I also would leave these notes pretending to be the tooth fairy. And I would, like, everyone was like a long saga. Like, it ended up becoming like, by my third kid, I was like, oh, please don't lose any more teeth. Like, it was like this whole annoying thing to have to do. And especially like, as our kids started staying up later, I was like, it's 9 o'clock. Like, Mama wants to go to sleep.
Yep.
I can't hide this letter. So, but I would write like these very elaborate notes. And then one of my notes was like, I bet you're wondering like where I'm going to take your tooth. And I'm going to tell you, it is going to the Museum of Lost Teeth, where all the teeth that fall out of children's mouth are kept on permanent exhibit. And I don't know, it's just like sort of stuck with me, and I really liked it. And I was like, I thought it would be a very cute book to write. And so I wrote it. I knew nothing about children's books. There's like it's like kind of, it's like more of a formula and a science. Mm-hmm. Like, as you know, as a librarian, like I didn't know any of this, like learning about like that the story has to pivot and change like at the same place that you would turn the page to keep the child interested, and that you need like an opportunity for a very different type of art on the next page. Like I didn't know any of that. I just wrote the story. And then I got an agent, like after I was just like my agent, I asked her to represent it. She's like, I would be doing you a disservice. Like I've never sold a children's book in my life. I don't know a single children's editor. Like I can't do this. She's like, it's cute. I was like, okay. Right. And for the longest time, I was like, should I like even bother? And then I like was kind of gnawing at me. And then I did get an agent, like a lovely agent, Louise Fury. And then she ended up actually selling it, which I can't believe. And it's cool. Like it's coming out in a year, and the illustrator is amazing. I've already seen all the pictures. I've seen the cover. It's like crazy fun. And I definitely anticipate this being a one-off thing for me, but I like that I'm going to like just learn an entirely new side of the business. So
that's so super exciting. And I love the title, The Museum of Lost Teeth. And actually I worked in high schools for 20 years. And just during the pandemic, I work in a district that's K through 12. And I switched schools to an elementary school for pandemic reasons last year. And I ended up loving it so much that I'm staying. So this is all just to say that I can get the Museum of Lost Teeth now for my school library. So I'm so excited.
Get those cute kids in your library and Zoom with me. Like I'll read
yes.
It's really fun, and I'll tell them the story. But anyway, people are not here for me. They are here for you. So I'm going to ask the questions. All right. Well, we already kind of went over this. Jody asked, I love this book. Is there any chance this book will have a sequel? We already know.
Yes.
Danielle asks, what inspired you to write this story? Well, we know the Gilmore Girls. What themes in this book did you enjoy placing into the story? That's a great, I think that is like, Danielle, that's a hard question. Themes, that's a hard question, but
it is.
I'm not the one who has to answer it. So let's explain.
So one of the things, I don't know if this is a theme so much as it is just a thing that was important to me, is what I always loved about the Gilmore Girls was the multi-generational mother-daughter situation, because it wasn't just Rory and Lorelai, it was Emily too, and it was these three women, and it was really their three stories, kind of thing. And as much as I'm not a big fan of the revival, if anybody watched the Gilmore Girls revival, I hope Robert's not going to kill me for saying I didn't love it. I don't know how he felt about it, but I know he's a big fan of the Gilmore Girls. But I didn't love the revival, but I did love see, there's somebody else didn't like the revival, but I did love Emily's arc in the revival. Emily's arc was the one that I loved the best. So I did love that like 3-generational arc kind of thing. And so I wanted to focus on women. I wanted to focus on mothers and daughters. I am both a mother and a daughter. I have a son too, so this is not at all to like leave my son out, but the whole mother-daughter connection is a very special thing. And I didn't get it until I had kids. I didn't get it how much my mom, loved me. I mean, your mom loves you, hopefully, but like you don't really get your parents until you have kids. And so that was really important to me to put into it. And that was one of the big things is while Alyssa's focusing on herself and Gabby, she seems to be like pushing her mom away. And her mom isn't trying to, be like a nosy Budinsky kind of thing. She just wants her daughter to still need her, even though her daughter's all grown up and, supposedly, can deal with life on her own. And so that was a really big thing for me, is I wanted to show mothers and daughters needing each other at all stages of their lives. So that was one theme that was really important to me. Fathers were important in this story too. There's a lot of father stuff. So not leaving the awesome dads out there, because my dad's here tonight too. But that was really important as well. But I also like the idea, because I feel this very much, that no matter what age we are, we have no clue how to do life. Like it's all just like figuring it out as you go. So we've got Gabby, who's, like 22 and thinks she has this plan that's going to, make sure that she doesn't repeat the mistakes that her parents made, even though her parents' lives are very different than hers. And then we've got Alyssa, who thinks she has things all figured out when she's on the brink of 40 and then surprise gets pregnant after a one-night stand with her ex. And this idea that we never have it all figured out, and that something's always going to get thrown in our way, and it's always going to be like sort of a wrench in the plan. And, kind of like what I brought up before about not knowing really that I wanted to write with the intent of being published until my mid to late 30s. Just like Gabby, realizes something about her career aspirations in this book, and Alyssa realizes something about, her relationship with her ex-husband in this book, and this idea that we have our truths that we tell ourselves, but our truths aren't always the way that other people see our story. And so going back and sort of revisiting, like Gabby has to see her parents in a different light. Alyssa has to see hers and Matt's relationship in a different light, and realize that the truth that maybe you've been telling yourself for decades isn't the whole story. So that was an important theme for me too. And that sounds hopefully not too hokey and weird, but yeah.
I like that. Well done. So we have a few more questions. How was the experience writing the Bloom Girls different from writing your previous romance novels? From Dana.
When I wrote myself into a corner, I couldn't just throw in a sex scene. Because that wasn't the story. There's a little bit of sex in this book, but not, I write on-page sex in my romance books. They're not closed door scenes, and the sex is always part of the story, and it moves the story forward. And that's part of, a romance. That's part of the romance beats of a story. In women's fiction, it's not. I mean, there were some points where some sex happened, and it was because of what was happening, in the story. But the romance isn't the story in this. And so there was a lot less of that going on. So that was a lot different. My current romance books, because I have written just some plain old contemporary romance, but my current ones are cowboys. So I wrote cowboy contemporary romance. And we were actually chatting a little bit before we went live tonight. And I was joking around about how I can't throw much Jewish culture into cowboy books because it's a little, I mean, as much as I talk about being, culturally Jewish and not, super religious, I do think it would be very off-putting to all of a sudden, throw a Shabbat dinner into, a rancher story or something like that. So there was a lot difference there. So yeah, my romances right now take place in small towns and on ranches. And in the Bloom Girls, I got to bring it home. Like I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. And so I got to write about, the place that I know.
Love that. Okay. For Amy from Robert, I've probably asked you a few years back, but are you Team Jess? I won't even mention the other teams.
Yeah, Robert, come on. What team, hashtag Team Jess all the way. Yeah, we're talking about Gilmore Girls here. Rory dates 3 main dudes in Gilmore Girls, and I'll name Dean and Logan. But yeah, I was Team Jess the whole way. And another reason why the revival just doesn't work.
I'm watching Gilmore Girls for the first time now with my daughter. I've never seen it, so we're going.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, it's not a spoiler because lots of things happen in the 7th season.
I like so many of my friends are obsessed. I feel like I already know about the 3 guys,
Right.
And then the last question is, do we have a title for the second book that we can share?
We don't. Right now, it's just called Bloom Girls 2 because I don't know what to call it. It's very, very different. Nobody in the story is, it's not like a mother-daughter thing. It's more of a friendship story. Of course, the little bit of romance sprinkled in because there's always a little bit of romance in my books. But the Bloom Girls was so on point, and that wasn't the story. That wasn't the title of the story when I turned it in to my editor. And it was, I'm going to credit Forever with this because my publisher came up with this title, The Bloom Girls, because the Gilmore Girls, like it's so on point. So call it that. And I kind of hate the fact that I didn't think of it, but I am the worst at titles. So right now I have no idea what I want to call the second book. Like I know what the story is, but I don't know what to call it. So sorry to disappoint, but I have no idea what it's going to be called. I will have to make a decision by September 1st when I have to turn it in.
We'll follow along with your social media, and we will follow along and your website, and we will all eagerly await finding out the title.
Right. Eventually it will turn up. I see Eileen is asking in the chat, does the Bloom Girls 2 feature Miriam? So she is not a main character in the book, though she may show up midway through it. I'm not promising anything, but the main 2 women in the book are Becca, who is Alyssa's sister, and Sadie, who is Matthew's sister in the Bloom Girls. And they are 2 women who have known each other since they were in middle school, because that's when, their siblings got knocked up and connected their families. But they're like polar opposites. They've never been friends. And something happens that has them basically living in a vacation rental together for a month in the summer.
Love that.
And, yeah.
I'm excited. Right, well, Amy, you're very talented. You're so charming and so nice. And I want to come to Chicago. And
Please do. Lauren and I will take you to a proper Jewish bakery.
Lauren, and we can Column's Bakery.
Yes.
It sounds amazing. And I'll bring you some Zabars.
Yes, please.
That would be awesome. And thank you everyone for asking such great questions and being so lively in the chat. It was very fun to be here. Estelle is back.
I am back. Thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation. I hope that everyone... Oh, wait. There's a question.
Oh.
Does it have to do with the major clue you dropped at the end?
Oh,
Amy?
gosh, yes. Yeah, I would be a horrible, horrible person if I wrote that last line and then didn't follow up. So yes, that is the catalyst for the next book, is that last line of the first book. So it's a sequel in that I throw in a huge twist at the very end of the Bloom Girls, but the Bloom Girls ends well for the main characters. It ends fine. The story's over. Everybody's gonna, ride off into the sunset or whatever. But yeah, I had this idea for a secondary story, and I kind of threw in this last line, and some people love it and some people do not, but that's okay. I'm happy I did it. But yeah, it's definitely have to do with that clue.
I like a cliffhanger.
I had to go back and read the last page while you were both talking, because I was I knew there was a cliffhanger, but I'm what's the line?
Oh, that happened to me, Estelle. Somebody I think it might have actually been Lauren, and I don't know if I told Lauren this when Lauren finished it, and she's like, "Oh my God, that last line!" Like she had posted it on Facebook, and I was like, "What the hell did I write for the last line?"
And all these people on Instagram have been quoting lines from Last Summer at the Golden Hotel, and I'm like, I didn't write that. Like, what page was that on? No recollection.
Isn't that awesome? Like what I love is like what readers probably don't know is that we haven't seen these books.
Yeah.
Like, once they're on the shelf, we haven't actually looked at the text of these books for months and months and months.
And we're writing new material.
Yeah.
What? I mean, this line was like so good, and I was like, I have no idea who said it and what it's about or anything. So,
but then isn't that also like a pleasant surprise? You're like, oh, I'm pretty good, aren't I?
Yeah, yes. Although I was like, are they getting the book confused with a different book? And I had to, like, they put the page number though, and I was able to confirm. So, anyway, Janice, thank you, Janice.
That's such a good Jewish mom. Thanks, Mom. Mom, you have to read The Last Summer at the Golden Hotel. Nice. I did it on audio. Sorry, so you have to go get your own copy.
Nice Jewish girls.
Thanks so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you to Barbara's Bookstore for hosting this on their platform. You can grab Alyssa's book with signed book plates, with the link that I will share again. And we also have Amy's book that is signed at Barbara's Bookstore as well. And if you use the code EVENT, you get 10% off your order, which is amazing. And you know what? That just means you can buy more books.
Yay.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. I hope you have a great evening. Happy release day, Amy. We're so happy.
Thank you so much.
And Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good night, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.